Hello, everyone. It's Joe Abadi for Vintage Motocross Q&A. Thank you for joining me this morning on a very special edition of Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'll tell you about my guest in just a moment, but right now I have to thank the people that make this show possible. Motion Pro, Preston Petty Products, The Moto Barn, and George Ackerman, Vintco, ReplicaMotorcycleParts.com, Racer X, the International Motocross Museum, Full Circle Racing, and my dear friend Mike Chamberlain, who is a big show supporter. I also want to thank our newest show supporter, Al Roof. Al, thanks so much for helping out with the show. My guest this morning has had quite a unusual career. Like many of us, he was involved with dirt bikes and motocross and off-road racing in the Southern California area throughout the 70s, the 80s, and even carried on a little bit past that. He went on to college. We've all heard the story. He went on to be a successful businessman. His love for cars took him into putting together one of the most spectacular car shows, international car shows in the world at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. His passion for motocross never really left him, and he decided that he wanted to know more about the International Motocross Museum. I want to welcome as my guest this morning, Mr. Stuart Sobek. Stu, thank you. Good morning. Was that introduction, was that on par to what you've really done, Stu?
Yeah, that was right on. We're done. We're done here.
Thank you very much, Stu Sobek, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, we'll see you later.
Hey, Stu. Oh, I want to remind the people too. Don't forget to keep sharing the show, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. And I believe this morning we are also on the International Motocross Museum group, which is why we're here. Stu is the managing director of the International Motocross Museum. Stu, you grew up, you got the moto bug like many of us. Tell us about where that began and how long that lasted.
So I'll never forget, there was a kid down the street who got an SL70 Honda for Christmas, and he was riding that thing up and down the block, and all his kids went out. I was 11, and we all watched him run up and down the street. And we're like, wow. We looked at it. We all drooled all over it. He wouldn't let us touch it, of course. And it was really fun. That was like my first, like, oh, look at how cool that is. And we spent hours looking at it. And that was it. So then a couple of our brothers, not my brother, but a couple of the kids on the street, their brothers had motocross bikes, and they were playing at Saddleback Park. So we started going up there on the weekends and watching them race. And after I heard that, and I smelled that smell of premix burning, and I saw those guys and I saw what they were doing, and I got the bug, and I got it bad. And of course I was 11 years old, and I waited till I was 14 before I got my first bike. But we used to go up there on weekends at Saddleback and watch the guys race, and I was the kid hanging on the fence watching guys go by in 1971, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. So eventually you did get to race too. So take us through that era on what maybe some mini bikes that you had, or what was your real first race bike? How'd that progress?
Well, my first bike is what I could afford, which is an Indian MT100. Yeah. And it was an underpowered little bike, but it was a great bike for me to learn on. And then I slipped into a Penton 175, which was still pretty rough, but had that KTM engine, so it looked pretty serious. But it was rough on the suspension department. It had that huge exhaust pipe that stuck out 6 inches on the side. And that was it. But in 1977, I slipped into the brand new RM125B. And that was a real modern bike with the long travel suspension. And that's when I started racing. And then I hit it hard from there. That was the first real competitive bike I had.
Were your mom and dad supportive of that?
Well, my mom had to be only because I couldn't drive. And so
Right.
she had to, we had a little pickup truck that we'd borrow and we would take it. And my mom would drop me off in the beginning of the day at Saddleback and pick me up at 4 o'clock at the end of the day.
Right.
And that was it. So, yeah, it was hard not being able to drive. By
Yeah.
77, I was able to drive and then I did my own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom supported me enough to take me. She could see it was my passion and I liked it. Of course, she was worried as can be. You're going to break your leg. You're going to
Of
kill
course.
yourself. All those things.
Yeah.
I'm
And,
still here.
yeah, but and you know what? As you got older and you became a parent, or you saw what kids did, you understood then what your parents were kind of worried about.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, Stu, you were down there in that California hotbed of motocross at that time. I've got
yeah.
to think you went to some of the best tracks in the world at that, in that area. What were some of the places that you got a chance to ride?
So of course, it's funny. Like I talked to Terry Good, and we were both at Saddleback so much, probably at the same time, probably walking past each other,
Yeah.
which is it's so funny when you think about that. But I had the opportunity to go to several of the U.S. Grand Prix at Carlsbad. I was able to see Garrett Wolsink win 2 of them, and then I saw Marty Moats was the first American to win. I got to see that. Later on, I moved up to the San Francisco Bay Area. I got to see Supercross. I love the fact that I was able to attend the paddle tire Supercross at Oakland in
Oh, yeah.
1979.
Jimmy Weiner, 79.
Yeah, Jimmy Weiner. That was an amazing surprise for everybody, and
Yep.
wow, what a race! But that was a real piece of history too. And so I've had the experience to the ability to see a lot of races in the past and participate in them myself. Never at that level.
I want to thank our sponsor, Full Circle Racing, who has a great special going on for this CZ backing plate, just $179 from Full Circle Racing. If you don't want the logo on it, it's only $169. Thank you, Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing, for being a show sponsor for Vintage Motocross Q&A for about 4 years now. We're with Stuart Sobek. He is the Managing Director of the International Motocross Museum. We're getting to know Stuart a little bit better. In just a moment, we'll be talking about the museum. But I've got a couple of things that I want to talk to Stu about. And you know what? I'm going to be kind of candid here for a second. I've only met Stu one time in person. That was in Chicago at the beginning of January. We've had a couple of Zoom meetings, but I've never had any time to ask Stu any questions or go over anything like we're going over here today. So it's kind of a refreshing time for me too, and a learning curve as well. You got into the dirt bike bug. What about after that ended? Did you go on to college? Did you just get a job? What happened, Stu?
Yeah. So again, coincidentally, I went to San Diego State. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I got accepted at San Diego State, and I went for an engineering program. And I was looking for a job as I had to earn some money to work through school. And I answered an ad for it was a shop boy at Lucky Yamaha, which was in Lemon Grove. It was one of in San Diego, a little area outside of San Diego. It was one of the prominent Yamaha dealers in the area. And I started in the back in the shop, and it was cool because racing and bikes were my hobby. But I got to be in the back and I got to open up the crates and build the bikes when they came in, which was kind of a cool thing for a 18-year-old kid. So I got to build the bikes. I moved into the parts department, and it was fun because I worked at a couple of Yamaha shops, San Diego Yamaha. I did a stint there, but Lucky Yamaha was where I worked for a long time, and I also worked for San Diego Kawasaki. But working for the Lucky Yamaha was where a lot of the local racers came in. And I remember when a young Ricky Johnson got a support ride.
Really?
And he and his dad came in and started ordering parts. They got the support ride from Yamaha, so they came in with a laundry list of parts. And our job was to order them all up, and so it was really fun. I was really right in the middle of it. Brock Glover was living in El Cajon, which was like 5 miles away. I had an apartment. My first little apartment was in El Cajon. Hallman Racing was right there. I felt like I was right in the middle of all of the things that were going on with motocross at that time. And it was it's a really cool place because I was there. I was servicing the guys who were the racers. I was getting them parts. South Bay Raceway was right there. We'd go on, I think, Wednesday nights and Friday nights and race motocross. And I was never that good, but I was enthusiastic. But I knew a lot of the people there because I worked at the shops. And it was a great place to be for a couple of years. It really put me right in the middle of
Yeah.
that whole. I was in the middle of that motocross thing. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It's funny that you mentioned, you said you weren't that good, but you were enthusiastic. And that enthusiasm and the love and passion for the sport is what carried all of us a whole lot further in it than talent to race did. We recognized that maybe we didn't have it, but we really, really never stopped loving it, and we never gave up. How long you raced desert too? I mean, after college, you had the jobs. You went on into racing or riding in the desert a bit too?
Yeah, because I had all these guys coming in, and they're all putting all this stuff. These guys were coming in buying stuff for their 465s, and I'd hear about the YZ 465 was just out, and they were running those in the desert, the big desert races. Back then, they were doing Lucerne Valley, they were doing Barstow to Vegas, they were doing a whole bunch of things, and also there were a lot of enduro guys. So I was racing on Wednesday nights, Friday nights, and weekends, and you get those motos for like 15 minutes. There was so much work for so little time that you were riding. I was looking for something to give me more riding time. And so I started doing some desert races and enduros, and I did the Tecate 500, and I did a bunch of the races down in Southern California because I was with people that were doing that. And so they kind of took me along, took me under their wing, and got me involved in them. And I like the enduros were fun. You'd go out to the desert, you'd ride for 3 or 4 hours. It was really satisfying, a lot of fun. And it wasn't my racing competition with motocross, which was my true love, but I did get to be on bikes. You're on bikes with your friends. That's what it's all about. You reach over and grab your buddy's handbrake and his front brake. All that stuff. That's what going out like the guys you first watched on any Sunday. A bunch of guys going out playing together.
Yeah,
that's what motorcycling is all about.
Stu, we're going to take a little commercial break. We'll be back with more Stu Sobek and some things about the International Motocross Museum.
Hi, I'm Tommy Croft, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A with Joe Abadi. We'll be right back with my dear friend Joe.
Vinco, who already has a full line of vintage parts, now has air shocks that are an exact duplicate of the original air shocks so popular in the late 70s. So whether you're looking to build a full racer or museum showpiece, these shocks will give you that incredible 70s look and improve your bike's performance. These new air shocks are fully rebuildable with Vinco rebuild kits, and all shocks are hand assembled in the USA with all new components. Every component is brand new. Just like the originals, our air shocks are adjustable with 2 chambers, high and low pressure, giving you tremendous flexibility for settings of your bike suspension. The Vinco air shocks come fully assembled and ready for installation. Just add air or nitrogen. The kits include the manual and spacers. Visit Vinco.com to check out the air shocks and all that Vinco has to offer to help you get back on track and to keep that ride going.
We are back with Stu Sobek, my guest this morning. Hey, Stu, when I met you out in Chicago early January, you said that you had – can you hear my voice coming through your end? You getting the feedback there?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
You can hear me just fine? Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that into the new millennium, 2004 or so, you had some modern bikes too.
Yeah, the last bike I had was a 95 YZ250. And the problem is I loved it. It was cool. It was a great, progression through time. But I was running out of people to ride with. And, it's just a function of getting older and having your life and other things going on. Mm-hmm. I didn't ride it as much. I didn't have anybody to really ride with that much. And that was the problem.
Yeah. We all
I had that bike for 6-7 years, and then I sold it. And that was the last motocrosser I've had, sadly.
What did you major in college? What path did that take you down after your college years were done?
So, actually, I grew up in the era when Heikki Mikkola won the world championship on the Husqvarna.
Yeah.
I was a Husky guy in 1979. I had a Husky CR250 and I had a 78 CR390. I was racing 250 in open class. I was a Husky guy, but that actually had a great influence on me because I was telling my mom and dad, I want to go to Sweden and I want to work for Husqvarna and I want to be an engineer. So I went to engineering school, and my goal was to work for Husqvarna.
Was
I
it
was going to go
really?
to Sweden.
You want to hear
Needless to
something
say,
funny,
I
Stu?
didn't.
Hey, Stu, while we're talking about this, I had Gunnar Lindstrom on the show. Obviously, was born in Sweden,
Yeah.
and that was his goal too, was to be an engineer at Husqvarna in Sweden. And it's not an easy position to get, not even for a kid from Sweden.
No, yeah.
You,
Well,
you had
I've
some high
always dreamed big. I've always dreamed big, Joe. And
Yeah.
so I thought, I'm going to go to engineering school, and I wanted to do that. But by the time I got out of engineering school, I got a great job working with the Navy in San Diego. So I stayed in San Diego. I continued to ride and have my friends and ride desert, and we'd go to Glamis and all the desert locations. We were out there all the time. And then I had the opportunity to move to Silicon Valley and go into commercial real estate, which was a great move for me. It was a 1989, 87, 88, 89. It was right before, well, actually, it was a good time to get into the real estate
Yeah.
market. But I learned Silicon Valley. And so my engineering then took me, kind of how buildings work and the mechanical systems of buildings. And I could do math very quickly and I could understand things and locations and whatnot. So it's a natural progression to me go to engineering into real estate, even though I was doing real estate sales, but understanding how buildings are built, what goes into that. And it's funny, I did that for 30 years. I worked in Silicon Valley doing commercial real estate, had my own firm up there, was one of the pioneers of that industry. When the internet came to be, it was an amazing time to be alive, is what I'll tell people. But that it's funny now, all those experiences now I'm applying to the International Motocross Museum because I had my motocross, my love for motocross, my engineering skills, my ability to think and organize things, and then my work with buildings, understanding buildings, what goes into it, what makes them work. And that kind of led me later into the Las Vegas Concours. I tried to retire. I didn't, but I came to Las Vegas and I was going to a lot of car shows throughout the years.
Is this one of your shows here, Stu? Is this the last one?
That's the last show at the Wynn on the ground with the sphere in the back.
I do want to talk about this, Stu, because I found it to be a rather fascinating part of all the things you had gone through. And as you said a moment ago, you always dreamed big. Now, you went to the Wynn Hotel with this idea to have this Concours out on their golf course a few years before, and they said, we like the idea, kid, but why don't you go to Altoona, Pennsylvania, get some experience and come back after that?
Yeah, why don't you do one first?
I'm sorry. Why don't you do one first?
Yeah, why don't you do one first and show us what it looks like? Which was fine. I've always dreamt big. I've always shoot for the stars. It's what I do, and I pride myself on being able to do things that other people can't do.
How did you get the experience, Stu? Where did you go? How many times did you do it before the Wynn said it looks good, bring it back?
Well, so we started, and I started the show. It took several years to do it, to establish it. I mean, 4 years, the legal, building the trophies, doing the marketing, getting people together, all of getting the team. It took 4 years before we could even do it. So I started in 16, and we did our first show in 19, and we did it to great accolades. We were a world-class show right out of the chutes, which is what I dreamt for Las Vegas. And then we had COVID. COVID hit. It shut everything down. So I did one show, and then we got shut down for COVID. We sat around twiddling our thumbs for a year and a half, going, God, are we ever going to be able to come back? What's going on? Like so many people did. We were able to do one. We came back in 2021, and we did a great show. And it was after that the Wynn called me and said, come on in and talk to us. And it was after that I partnered up. So I actually did 2 shows before we partnered with the Wynn. And then we did the first show with them in 23, and we did 24. And now we're permanent partners with them. So the show will be there every year. And we've joined forces, and actually that is an interesting thing, because that's what has allowed me now to have time to work on the museum.
Yeah.
I tell people, we went from a small group of people organizing this Concours d'Elegance, this world-class show, and all of a sudden I've got 12,000 people at my disposal at the Wynn. So still working on the car show. I'll forever be the founder and the chairman emeritus of that show, but now I have a lot more time, and that's what's kind of led me to the International Motocross Museum.
Stu, at this point, and I speak, well, I don't want to say in the third person, but there's this small group of people, me, you, Bob McNamara, of course, Terry Good, that we're all putting in the sweat equity and doing what we can to see this museum come to fruition. How many people did you have, and how many people did you have to help you put that show together? Something tells me you're used to getting a lot of production out of smaller groups. Is that?
I can do it on one hand, Joe.
I had a feeling because the time I've spent with you, you have a way of, as I said, getting small groups to make big progress. So how did you get those people together, and what did you do to help further that car show?
Okay, so here's the thing. So I tell people, I want to do a Concours d'Elegance. I want to do it in Las Vegas, entertainment capital of the world. Have you ever done one before? No. I've been to a lot of them. And here's what the thing is. I've been to a lot of them. So in the back of my mind, I'm cataloging. Oh, I like this. I don't like that. Oh, that looked good. I like the way they did that. And I was always thinking, oh, this is what I like. You put your list together of things you like and don't like. So when I started my show, I just said, I'm going to build the show that I always wanted to go to. I'm going to build it in my image. And I had this dream of a show, very similar to what Terry Good has. Terry's been collecting all this good for 46 years. He's been waiting for us to assemble this team so that we can assemble this International Motocross Museum. And here we are. So I was able to convince people, here's what my dream looks like. People liked my dream. They believed in my dream, and they got on board, just like you have, just like the other members of our team have. And everybody has a critical. There's only a small number of people in our team, but they're all good, and they all have a really great depth of abilities, and they've got great skill sets outside of building a museum. We have people that know buildings and engineering. We have people that know the parts, the stuff, the bikes, all the different aspects. So very similar to what I did in Concours, I was able to get people to believe in me and to see my dream. And once you do that, I think they could see the passion that I had for Concours, and I carry the same passion, if not more, for motocross. I want to see this thing get done in a big way. So when I first met Terry and talked to him about this, and the opportunity, and we've talked briefly about it, but this is 1974 is when I got my first bike. That's 50 years ago. Right. If you come up to me as a 14-year-old boy and said, in 50 years, you're going to have the responsibility of putting the legacy of all the people you're watching, you're going to have their legacy in your hands. And it is a huge responsibility, because I feel ownership of it. I feel like they gave so much to me as a young boy growing up. I watched these Europeans were larger than life. Heikki Mikkola, Roger de Coster, these guys coming over from Europe, Garrett Wolsing, who would come in and clean up at the USGP every year and go home. And you're like, who was that guy? It's crazy. They're superheroes. And then, of course, watching the Marty Smiths, the Bob Hannas, the Tommy Crofts, the Warren Reeds, those guys coming through, the American guys, Jim Pomeroy, all those guys coming through. I feel such a huge responsibility. So here we are. So I've done Concours, but now I'm focused on this museum, and I feel the same way. I feel such a strong passion, and we have such a great team. I need to see this done, and I need to see it done in a way that nobody else could do it. And so we've assembled a small team for this, similar to what I did with Concours. We only had 5 people.
Yeah.
But we got the right 5 people. And
You
we
got
have
the right
5 or
5
6.
people?
I think we have 6 on our team now. But
Still-
that's what you need. We've got what we need. Everybody's laser focused.
There's one thing that I just thought of. I don't want to forget it because I think it's a major part, being the name is International Motocross Museum.
Yeah.
Your car show was an international event. Share with the viewers here, just where did people ship cars from? What kind of money was spent to get cars into this show? Because from what I understand now, just behind Pebble Beach and only one other show, this is the 3rd largest concours in the world, extremely prestigious, and you managed to get an international crowd there, shipping Ferraris and Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis from Europe. How did that happen?
It's once you start that big ball rolling down the hill, it just gains momentum. And I had to ask, I had to individually go and ask people, bring your car, can you bring this, can you bring that? It wasn't just like I put out an ad and people started coming. Mm-hmm. I had to go to people, and I went to shows all over the world, and I invited them to come. And I shook their hands and said, I want you to be there. You need to do that. But what does it take? Even to ship a car across country, to ship a classic car, and to come for a couple of days or a week, you're talking a $5,000 or $10,000 bill.
Oh, yeah.
And it's for a one-day show. And so people really had to believe in me, and they had to see what it was. And my very first show, we had 120 of amazing cars from all across the country. We had one car come from Europe. And we were promised a car from Japan that didn't make it. We were promised a car from Argentina that didn't make it. We've got those cars now, but people brought cars from all over the country, and they made the investment in my dream, having never done it before. It's amazing. It was really amazing.
How many days was that show? How many days does that show go, Stu? Just a couple of days, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the first show was Friday. We had a gala, an opening night gala. Saturday Concours, and then my dream was to see these cars drive on the Las Vegas Strip. So I was able to arrange for the cars to have a parade lap on the Las Vegas Strip with police escorts and all that, and it was amazing. It was really cool.
Stu, I got to take a little commercial break. When we get back, I promise you, the viewers, because Stu's life is very, very interesting, but I promise you, when we get back, we're going to be talking about more about the International Motocross Museum, and we're going to see how that's progressing. We'll be right back.
I'm Brock Glover, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and we'll be right back.
Motocross struck America, coming from Europe like a lightning bolt, striking the hearts and minds of people all across the country and the world. Battles of intense racing and cutting rivalries with loyalty to brands and heroes intensified as years of blood, sweat, and dirt flew through the minds of those memories of champions as they wrestled their machines through almost impossible tracks. But where are those past champions? And where are their bikes? Terry Good, an ex-pro motocross racer, has made it his life mission to honor these heroes and the bikes they rode to stardom. We raced, we rode, we lived and breathed motocross. Go back in time and relive those moments, now preserved for the first time ever in the world's first museum dedicated to the history of motocross. Our new building is in the gate. Help us get a great start and you can be part of history. Go to internationalmotocrossmuseum.org and become a part of our team.
The International Motocross Museum is a not-for-profit 501(c) organization. All your donations and purchases are 100% tax deductible. Get over there. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a shirt. Maybe it's winter where you still are. Get yourself a nice wool cap like this. My guest is Stuart Sobek, the International Motocross Museum directing manager or managing director. Excuse me. Stu, I got two quick questions regarding the show, and then we're going to get right into this IMM stuff. What was the most expensive car that was at your show?
About $25 million.
What kind of car?
It was a Duesenberg, a one-of-a-kind Duesenberg that was made actually for the 1933 Chicago World Fair. Here we go. Full circle to Chicago again. It was made for, it was a Duesenberg, one of a kind. It was called the 20 grand because in 1933 it sold for 20 grand, which was, you know, that's when the houses were $800. So it was crazy. So it's a $25 million car. It had never lost before. It had never won anything but Best of Show. Came to my show and won Best of Show.
The other question I had was, you started off with 5 people, much like we're doing at the International Motocross Museum. And now, did you say you had 12,000 people that are involved in putting that show together? 12,000?
12,000. The Win provides access to 12,000 people at their hotel. We don't use them all, but we have all those resources. And so what you do, and what we'll do the same thing with the International Motocross Museum. We'll take our ideas, the founding members, we'll put this together and we'll take it up and we'll put it to a place where it can grow and live on its own. We're going to help it get started. We're going to put the plugs in. We're going to pre-mix the gas. We're going to fuel it up. We're going to kick it a couple times. It's going to start. We're going to do a few warm-up laps. And then we're going to hand it over to a large team that's going to be required to maintain this museum, because when the doors open, our work has just begun.
That's true, Stu. And if people could only see what that, and this is only a glimpse, this is nothing. See this picture right here? This is a fraction of what that building looks like. It's 100,000. Oh, it's really a little bit over 100,000 square feet. Absolutely incredible facility. And it's going to be happening. Truth is stranger than fiction, Stu. There's a lot of guys on Facebook who want to be a part of this. You hooked up with Terry Good, and Terry gave me a call and said, you know, this guy Sobek called me up, and he looks like the real deal. And you were the real deal. No question about that.
That's right.
And that's why I really wanted to spend the first part of this show. And you humbly said to me, don't spend too much time on me. Let's talk about the museum. Yeah, I want to talk about the museum. But people know me a bit. They know Terry Good a bit. They don't know you, but I wanted to show them the magnitude of what you have done, what you've created as far as the car show, your education, your background, and your ability to gather people and put them together. And that's what is really going to make this museum take off. Now, what do you see this museum looking like inside that will make it completely different than any other museum anyone has ever seen?
So I've seen a lot of car museums, of course, doing what I do.
Yes.
I've had access to a lot of museums and how they run and what they do. So I do have a lot of experience hearing from the people that run the museums. And not knowing, I cataloged all that information, not knowing we were going to do a motocross museum. But you know, what goes on there? I've seen all these pictures of bike collections, and where you see bikes stacked up one against each other. And I thought, I want to see the bike. I want to walk all the way around it. I want to look at it. I want to inspect it. Those are actually nicely spaced compared to some of the collections. You could barely put a piece of paper between the bikes.
But this is what we're trying to avoid, and we will avoid at the IMM. We don't want to really have it like this. We want to have more space around it. More of a open display where people can actually see what's going on. And when I use the expression see the history before them, it's true, because you're going to see things on that bike you'll never see in pictures, but you will see it in person, and it's fascinating. It truly is.
So we're going to be in order to avoid the stacked up bikes look, what we envision is like when you go to the Natural History Museum, you don't see stacks of dinosaurs stacked up next to each other. You see a T-Rex, and you see it in an environment, and there's a diorama. It's a diorama showing where it would have lived, how it would have looked when that dinosaur was alive. And that's the exact same thing we're going to do with this museum. That's why it's going to take time and real effort. We're not stacking the bikes in there, and you're not going to just walk through. It's going to look like in a parking lot. They're going to be dioramas showing these bikes in action at specific places. And I think that I hear mentioned that the Roger DeCoster diorama alone, 5-time world champion, is going to be something like 10,000 square feet.
It will be.
How do you take 5 world championships and display that and show people, that bike in action? You see Bob Hanna behind me here in one of his famous shots. That's Bob in action. How do you convey that? It's so cool, and the effort these guys made. When we do a museum, we have to show that. We have to show the bikes in their natural state. And that's one of the things that we're doing that's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be entertaining and interesting, even if you're not, Joe, you bring your wife in and she says, oh, I don't want to go look at a bunch of motorcycles. Well,
Right.
I mean, but you might walk in here, she might walk out of this museum saying, wow, that was really interesting. I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's no different than when maybe a kid or a young adult does go to the Museum of Natural History or something like that, and it's like, why do I want to go there? But next thing you know, it really captures your imagination, and you're really happy you went. Stu, let me ask you this: were you what were your thoughts when you heard that this is going to be in Chicago? Did you think that was a good location, or did you scratch your head and say, I'm going to go talk to this guy and maybe move this thing a little further west?
Yeah. I mean, first thought was, why isn't it in Southern California? That's right. the hotbed of motocross.
Yeah.
But Chicago makes a lot of sense for so many reasons. And the reason I started the Concord Elegance in Las Vegas was because I wanted to do something different. But I also wanted to make it a destination. I wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to have a place where people had lots of hotel rooms, lots of choices, lots of things to do, great restaurants, entertainment, all that. Chicago is an international city. Now, number one, it's got an international airport that flies everywhere. And you can fly into O'Hare, and for a 30-minute taxi ride, you're at the museum. It's very well located. But Chicago has a lot to offer. But if you think about it, it's equidistant. This sport started in 1924 in England, started in Europe, and then it took off in Southern California. I think that Chicago actually is the perfect central location between Southern California and Europe, and people can fly there from everywhere. It's a 2.5-hour flight from Southern California. Yeah. It's a longer flight than that from Europe, but it's a great location, and people will want to come here, and they'll want to spend a week. They'll come here for a week. Sure. People that are coming from Japan will spend a week, and they'll see Chicago. They'll see all the surrounding areas. Where we are outside of Chicago is a beautiful area, and there's so much to see and so much to do. It feels like you're in the country. Actually, it doesn't feel.
I agree with you, Stu, and I really don't. I don't think that as the American racer, motocross enthusiast, even vintage enthusiast, you have no idea how big vintage and the history of motocross is in Europe. You have no idea how big it really is. It is something that is absolutely beyond your imagination. I mean, if you go to it's not really a good example, but Belgium, not a very big country, but of course has the most world champions, the most world championships, has some of the most incredible tracks in the world. And it's just, it's like baseball or football. It's like baseball or football is here. It's just huge there. Stu, and while I'm talking about how big it is in Europe, what do you think about some of the people and some of the, how can I say it, the companies and the corporations and the people that are behind the IMM? Can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, we're forming important relationships now with manufacturers, with all the people that want to be involved with the museum, because we need help. We can't do this ourselves. We're a 501c. We're a nonprofit. We're doing this for the sport. This is not about how much money we can make. This is about supporting, representing the sport in the best way possible, showing off the equipment, the amazing array of equipment, bikes, jerseys, helmets, everything that we have. and we're going to need help from manufacturers and big companies to keep this thing going. Like I said, when we open the door, it's just the beginning, and there's going to be a lot of things to do along the way. But it's we're going to need help, and we're seeking to form those relationships now, long-term relationships with motorcycle manufacturers, parts, gear, all the same people that you talk to all the time at the vintage shows. We need their help, and we want them to be involved. This is their sport too. This is all of our sport, and we all need to, kick in a little bit.
Stu, I want to put you on the spot just a little bit. With all this experience you have with the car show and probably a lot of financial backing from different corporations and areas, do you feel that some of those people may come on board with the IMM?
Could be. And we've got a lot of alcohol sponsors. High-end people that make high-end alcohols. There are a number of people that there could be some good joining together of forces, but we're going to talk to those people. Okay. And we will talk to them and ask them for help and see. But I mean, if you look today at the people that are involved in motocross and arena cross, supercross, it's motorcycle people, energy drink people. Those are all the people that we need. All the people that are sponsoring Supercross now, those are the people that we want on board.
What do you think the biggest takeaway from the Win Show is that you learned that you could say to Terry, "Hey Terry, here's something you don't want to do, and here's a way I could save you. Oh, I don't know, $5 million in 10 years." What was that?
Well, when I first reached out to Terry, I said, "I can save you a lot of trouble. Here's why you need me. I can save you a lot of trouble because I can keep you from making all the stupid mistakes that I made that cost me a lot of money when I got started." And so right from the start, I know the things to do and not to do. And here's the biggest takeaway I have probably is people always say you can't do that. Hey, have you ever done a museum? No, but we can do it, and we'll do it in a grand manner. We'll do the best museum you've ever seen. Why? People told me you can't do Concours. I tried that. We thought about it. We wanted to do it. You can't do that. Well, I'm the guy who's always done things that other people can't do. And the more, it's almost like a challenge, the more people say you can't do that.
Right.
Joe, you can't get on that 74 CZ and do a couple of hot laps, and you do. I've always been the guy who said, not bragging about it, but quietly said, I'm going to show them, I'm going to do it. And I put on a world-class Concours d'Elegance. We're in our 5th year now, having never done one before, just been a fanboy. I was just a guy out in the audience. I was a fan. I had collector cars. I was in the show, but you can, if you dream it, you can do it. As Walt Disney said, you can dream it and we can do it big. We have the resources. We know how to do it. We've never done a museum, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. We've got the right team together. And if I learned anything from Concours, it's follow your dream, make it happen. If you have the passion, you can make it happen. Yeah. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And Stu, we've talked about this before, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about it now, maybe that you've had some time to digest it. I have always felt, and I've shared it with Terry, we need to somehow get the IMM and its history and what it's about. We need to get that before the modern crowd. We've got stadiums filled with people every week for 18 weeks. We need to get the modern bike into this museum in some way, whether it's through showing the history of Husqvarna, how it started in 1904 and how Malcolm Stewart rides one today, or whatever it is. But we need to tap into that audience. It's huge, and we need to get there. What are some of your thoughts on that? And have you given it any further ideas or thought any more about that?
We think about it a lot because it needs to be done. If you go to the Canton, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And you go in there and it's not all Tom Brady. You go in there and you see, you start from the beginning, the guys with the leather helmets, the guys playing pro football with no pads. That's the history. That's where that all began. That's how we got to Tom Brady and all the stuff going on now. So you have to look back and see where this came from. I think it's amazing. I grew up in the era where we went from 2.5-inch travel rear shocks to 13-inch travel in a matter of a year or two. It was crazy how fast that. But I was there when all that development happened.
Yeah.
And when reed valves first came on the scene, all that stuff. When water cooling first came on. And when four strokes first made their
comeback
into motocross. So you have to go back and look and to go back and see these old bikes. Now, some of the bikes from 1924 and newer, you go back and you're like, that thing was featherweight at 400 pounds. Oh my God, how did you get that thing so light? It's only 400 pounds. And compared to what they're riding today, it's unbelievable to see how they came through time, and then how quickly in that period in the 70s and 80s, how quickly everything changed with the Reby front suspension, the long travel forks. Motocross Fox came on the scene with all their Fox air shocks, all of the development, all the things going on there. You have to go back and see it, and I think it's interesting. Just like, and you go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, you're going to read about Jackie Robinson. You're going to read about the stars of the time. You're going to read about the early stars, what they did, and look at the bats that they used, and the catcher's mitts that they had. All those things crept up. So look at motocross today. Look at supercross, arena cross. Look at what those guys are doing. All that came from the development of those early bikes. Yeah. And it's so interesting to see how they did that.
And you know what, Stuart, if I may interrupt you for just a second, people have no idea what Terry Good has in storage units in his home. And you have no idea. It's absolutely mind-boggling that he must have 30 sets of works forks. He has all the Ribby suspension, including drawings. There are wheels there from Roger DeCoster throughout his career. There's a box as big as a suitcase full of jets. There are trophies that are so rare from the 30s and 40s from the Isle of Man. Okay. There are other trophies there, all of Roger's trophies, all of Bill Mills.
Joe Robert.
The Joe Robert, the FIM pins where he won the World Championships or the Trophy of Nations for 250. These pins are solid gold. Gold. There is a room just for media, which is it must be 1,000 square feet. It's probably bigger than that. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but Harry Everetts and another man named Gene Bourbon were with Terry the past 4 or 5 days. Jean Bourbon has the absolute most incredible collection of video and pictures in the world, and Terry's looking to put that collection in the International Motocross Museum. It is absolutely staggering. If you think it's just bikes and some jerseys and a few trophies, you are so very wrong. You can't even imagine. I'm telling you, I've been to Terry's place 3 times. He has taken me to 3 different places where there are bikes. My jaw sits on my chest when I get there. I just cannot.
It is staggering.
The trophies. And I can't think of the gentleman's name. He lived in Spain, but I think he was Swedish. He owned the Lido, the Monarch. Do you remember his name, Stu? I'm drawing a blank. Les Archer.
Oh, Les Archer, yeah.
He has trophies not only from Les Archer, he's got trophies from Les Archer's father and grandfather who raced the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. And you have no idea until you get there, until you see this, exactly what's going on. Stu, I got to take a little bit of a break. I got to thank my sponsor, ReplicaMotorcycleParts.com, Paul Parkinson Sr. Always making something new, always making something fantastic. Every week he's coming out with something new. This isn't the latest thing, but it's been out there for a couple of months now. The 1973-74 Honda CR250 Elsinore silencer, one of the most elusive parts if you are restoring this bike. Fits the 125 and the 250. It is available for $595 today as we speak from Paul Parkinson Sr. What did he send me the other day? He sent me this. This is an air boot for a 1974 Honda CR125. Here it is. Brand new, soft and pliable. Always something great going on, and there's something new every week from Paul Parkinson Sr. and replicamotorcycleparts.com.
Thanks for keeping them alive.
Oh, this guy does it like nobody else. I'm telling you.
Without guys like that, you know, none of these bikes would be running.
In fact, you know what? Terry has spoken to him about some little intricate items on some factory bikes that would be impossible to find. And Paul Parkinson Sr. says it's no problem. He has a way to make it, get him even the broken part or a good picture. We'll take some measurements, and he will be able to remanufacture the parts that even some of the rarest bikes in the world need to be finished. You said something about possibly, Stu, this was another great idea that you had, having some awards ceremonies at the International Motocross Museum for modern racers. What are your thoughts there?
I'd like to do a Hall of Fame. We're honoring the men of motocross.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see a Hall of Fame. I'd like to see us establish that. At the same time, I'd like to see the modern day gladiators coming in and getting their awards there. I'd like to see whoever's the Supercross champion come in. We could have a banquet for them and have the awards ceremony there, similar to what NASCAR does. NASCAR goes out and races 30 races a year, and then they have their awards ceremony in Las Vegas.
Right.
So you know, I'd like to see some cross pollination because we want the Supercross folks to come in and see us and be a part of our museum. It's motocross. It's the same sport. It's where we are. So we want them involved. We want to do things like that to get them in and have them feel like this is their museum too. It's not just about old stuff. It goes back 100 years. But you know, the evolution, to see the evolution is amazing. And if I can talk real quickly on, you were talking about all the little small parts.
Absolutely.
You know, there are so many things. You know, seeing the collection of stuff that Terry has. People think, oh, you know, the Motocross Museum. There's going to be 20 or 30 bikes in there. There is like
20 or 30
in there. There's like every bike. There's 400 motorcycles. But you know, Roger, there's every bike that Roger DeCoster won a championship on. Every bike that Joel Robert won a championship. All Harry Everett's bikes, Heike Mikkola's bikes, and then Bob Hanna, then Marty Smith. We've got Jim Pomeroy's stuff. We've got Chad Reed. We've got Jeremy McGrath. We've got the newer stuff in there too. We have all that stuff, but we've got, you know, when Roger crossed the line and won his 5th world championship, we've got his helmet, we've got his jersey, we've got his boots, we've got his pants, we've got the whole thing that he was wearing. We've got all that for all these riders. We've got their jerseys, all their gear they wore, all their helmets, goggles. But then you go in a warehouse and you say, oh, these are from Roger DeCoster's private collection. These are all the magnesium rear wheels.
Yes.
Off of his factory Suzuki's. And then, like you said, here's a box of carburetor jets with 1,000 different carburetor jets that were used on the work bikes. Here's a collection of spokes. Here's engines, whole engines on the ground. Oh, here's the only sand cast carburetor in the world. Here it is. They made a sand cast to save 3 ounces of weight.
Right.
Oh, fantastic. The stuff there. So we go out and we see, oh, here's our building we got to work with, 100,000-foot building. And we're all thinking, we can only show half the stuff. How are we gonna display this? We're gonna have to have the displays changing all the time. They're gonna have to be constantly changing to be able to see all the stuff that we have.
When you know what it was? I heard 100,000 square foot building before I saw all the parts, and I haven't seen them all yet. So when I said, 100,000, oh, I guess they could have this
Oh,
on
yeah.
this half and that on half. I'm wondering now if 100,000 is enough. I mean it. It's crazy. Not that it's crazy. It's amazing. It's not crazy. It's amazing. It truly is.
So a
Still,
100,000 square foot museum is a good sized museum. The Peterson
it is.
Museum in Los Angeles is about 100,000 square feet, but it's on 3 levels. We're on 1 level.
Yeah, and you know what? The other thing I like about it is too, and many people have been there. The Barber Museum, a fantastic, mind-blowing facility. However, there are 60 motorcycles going up on a 3-story Christmas tree. It looks like a Christmas tree, and there are motorcycles coming. You can't see them. You can't enjoy them. You know, the thing about the IMM is going to be that it's going to be. You're gonna sense that you're there, and this diorama idea that you and Terry have of recreating the pit area at Namur or Unadilla or whatever it is with the van sitting there. And Terry has purchased vans belonging to certain motocross people. He's gotten some from as far away as Europe. We are talking about having the toolboxes, the brooms, the shovels, the tent, the van, a complete recreation on a level of what a master director such as Francis Ford Coppola would do to recreate a scene in a movie. I mean, it's to that degree. This thing will be period correct down to the valve stem on a tire. Staggering.
So you know who also who's been involved and helpful in a lot of this is a lot of the mechanics. A lot of the race mechanics of the time, and they've provided parts and things and stuff. I mean, so Terry has pictures from 40 years ago, and he has found and purchased everything in that picture. Yes. So you're right. When we build a diorama and it shows the bike in the pits, there's going to be every single thing that was there on that day in 1974. All of those items are there, the exact items. It's like a living, breathing thing. It's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. And kudos to Terry Good. Terry is an amazing guy. We laugh about it. How could you carry all this stuff around for 45 years? But thank God that he did it. That he had that dream and that vision. That he's held it this long. That he's collected so much stuff to really bring these things to life. We are going to bring this sport to life in that museum, like nothing you've ever seen.
Stu, the number one question since the day Terry Good said he wanted to start a museum and create this amazing facility, the number one question: when's the door going to open, Stu?
If I could do it, it would be open today.
I know.
Okay.
Let's give the viewers a little bit of an idea. We've talked about it before. Optimistically, what are we saying?
We're shooting for summer of 25, because it has to be done right. Yeah, it has to be done not to perfection, but as close as we can get. It has to be the right thing at the right time. And we've waited all this time. Motocross started in 1924. Yep. We've waited 100 years. So if we wait a little bit more at this point in time to do it absolutely correct, then we're going to do that. So look for us to open. We'll have our opening event. We should have some banquets and some things probably before that. We'll do some.
I know there's going to be. Terry has been talking about. And people should really get involved with this. Anybody who has made a donation will be invited to not an open house, but will be invited to a closed party, soft opening of the International Motocross Museum, and that will be in the next year. So if you've made a donation, if you bought posters, hats, if you made a cash donation of any type, which is, of course, all totally tax deductible, you will get an invitation. There you go, Stu. You will get an invitation to the International Motocross Museum and, rub elbows with some of the greatest legendary racers of all time and get a look before anybody does at what this museum is going to be about. My guest today has been Stu Sobek, the International Motocross Museum Managing Director. Stu, if there is something I forgot or something you want to bring up right now, now would be a good time to do it. What do you got?
I just want to say everybody who is supporting us, everybody's supporting us in any way, whether it's just having the faith in us that we're going to do this, or sending a couple of bucks in, or sending a big check in. Every little bit helps. It gets us closer to our goal. And our goal is to represent you and the sport that we all love. And we're really looking forward. We're working really hard at this to do it right, to do
Yep.
the thing that has to be done in the right way, at the right place, at the right time. And it's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. It's something we're all going to be very proud of. And I can't wait for you to see it.
Stu Sobek, I want to thank you for being my guest today. This is a live episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A, but we will rebroadcast this episode for our show this week, 6 o'clock Wednesday night. So if you're watching it now, tell a friend if they want to see it again, they could catch it at 6 o'clock at Vintage Motocross Q&A on Facebook and YouTube. Stu, thank you again for being my guest today and for enlightening us on this project. And I know Terry, Bob McNamara, and myself are absolutely thrilled to have you on board with your creativity, your connections, and just your enthusiasm for this project.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a passion project for all of us. That's why it's going to be the best.
Stu Sobek, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Stu.
Number one.
That wraps it up for this episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Actually, you know what? We're going to wrap it up after this. My friend Scott and Debbie Burnworth, they're at it again. They have a fabulous 3-race series coming up, and that is happening in March 23rd, May 5th, October 5th. It goes throughout the summer and through the fall at Paris, Verona, and Glen Helen. Scott and Debbie Burnworth always doing a great job promoting vintage motocross throughout the season as much as they can. We get an early start here in Northern California or in Southern California, so it's always a good time for that. Motion Pro. They're still running a special, 20% off across the board on everything at Motion Pro except custom-made cables. When you go there, check out and use code MP9135. The Broom Factory in beautiful Maryland. If you haven't been there, you want to see a great collection, get over to the Broom Factory. They're opened up one Thursday a month throughout February, March, April, and May. That's the Broom Factory. Get a hold of Mike Slate or Bill Nazelrod. Vintage Motocross Q&A t-shirts and hoodies are available. Follow the link in the show description, and you can still become a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Drop me a line. I will tell you how to become a sponsor. You'll see all the great benefits that all of our sponsors have seen over the past 4 years. And, of course, we have that great little special going on right now. If you just want to be a show supporter, get a hold of me. It isn't very expensive. Every little bit helps. And as the International Motocross Museum grows, and it looks like I would be relocating there and have a special corner at the IMM, I can tell you that this show will continue. This show will continue in an amazing way because we'll be able to bring you broadcasts from the International Motocross Museum. I'll be able to do comparisons between works bikes and production bikes and all the people that have helped me along the way, Vinco, Full Circle, Motion Pro, Preston Petty. I'm not going to forget you when we get out there and get into the most amazing facility that the motocross world has ever seen. I'm Joe Abadi. You've been watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, Wednesday night, there will be a rebroadcast of this very show, and you'll be able to see it again. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Vintage Motocross Q&A.